Gerald Washington versus Deontay Wilder. Very, very, very interesting fight whilst it lasted. The end of the first round, I edged it to Gerald Washington, and I kind of wrote down 10-9 on my scorecard in Washington's favour, without really the suggestion that, that was going to be a meaningful first round. But the second and third rounds, I thought were clear Washington rounds, and I thought he was having real success against Deontay Wilder. After three, I had Gerald Washington clearly up. I said in my video pre-fight that Gerald Washington may be looking to put on a performance like Tyson Fury did against Vladimir Klitschko, in the sense that he will try and make Deontay Wilder tentative and try and make Deontay Wilder low volume. And I really do think Deontay Wilder struggled to adjust with a taller opponent in the initial fight. He has always been a very high output, very aggressive fighter. But in the first three rounds here, he was the low output guy. Perhaps he was more on the back foot. Gerald Washington, who's known as this low output defensive fighter, was the one pushing the pace. Gerald Washington was the one coming forward and serving up to Wilder. And I wonder if that was something to do with the height dynamic. I mean, let's look at Wilder's best wins. Stavern, Spilka, Duhaupas, Molina. I'm not saying these are tiny heavyweights by any stretch of the imagination, but they're substantially shorter heavyweights. Gerald Washington was someone bordering Wilder's own size, and I just wonder if that caused Wilder some problems. Perhaps he was more aware of judging the range, and perhaps that made him more low volume. He was probably aware that Washington could catch him from the range he was looking to engage from. A few times I saw Wilder's punches actually come up short. I saw his jab come up short a few times. And really early on, Gerald Washington was beating him to the jab. Gerald Washington was first in this fight for the first three rounds. He was first to act. He was controlling the pace. He was coming forward. He was banking good bodywork to Deontay Wilder's body. After three rounds, I actually thought Gerald Washington might nick the fight on points. I really did. Washington was handling Wilder relatively well, I thought. He was asking him lots of questions. And when Wilder was looking to throw that right hand, that long right hand that's so synonymous with the Wilder name, Washington was expecting it. And Washington ducked under it several times. I was quite impressed how Washington judged that right hand and ducked under it. I thought he looked relatively good in there, and he looked quite comfortable and composed. Really was the ring general in there for the first three rounds and controlling the pace. In the fourth round, there's a subtle change. I actually narrowly edged Deontay Wilder the fourth round, making it 3-1 on my scorecard. But what you'll notice if you watch that round is Wilder starts coming forward. He's able to put Washington on his back foot. And the second that happened, the momentum started to change. And for me, it was at that point in the fight that Deontay Wilder started to get on top. What happens in the fifth round is Wilder continues with that charge forward. He's not landing necessarily with a great deal, but the momentum has changed. Washington isn't controlling the pace so much. Washington isn't able to get his work off so cleanly. And then Wilder, in the fifth round, lands that big right hand for the first time in the fight. And Washington is dropped. And that's the thing about heavyweight boxing. You can have all of the talent, all of the skills. You can be winning 11-0 on points. But when someone's got the power that Deontay Wilder possesses, the fight can change at any moment. And I think that's why Deontay Wilder is such an exciting fighter to watch, because no matter who he's boxing, no matter what the scorecard is at that point, you know that he's liable to get a KO at any moment. And quite literally, with the first notable right hand that he landed on Gerald Washington in the fight, Washington's down, and it's a heavy knockdown. Washington gets up, Wilder charges in to finish the job. Again, he's wild, he's swinging, he's never going to iron that out. That's just Deontay Wilder. But the referee jumps in. Was it a good stoppage? Probably, yeah. I mean, I haven't been online, I haven't been on Twitter. I don't know if there's a perception that it was an early stoppage. When I watched it initially, I thought it was probably an early stoppage. Having said that, maybe on reflection, Washington was a bit of a sitting duck and would have been clocked with a right hand that would have sent him to the moon and back. So maybe it was a good stoppage. He looked very much out on his feet, I guess you could say. But yeah, I mean, credit goes to Gerald Washington, because even though the fight only lasted 5 rounds, he asked some real interesting questions that I haven't seen asked of Deontay Wilder before. And those first 3 rounds will be served as a blueprint to any tall, rangy heavyweight who fights Deontay Wilder in future. You know, whether that's Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, Hughie Fury, Vladimir Klitschko, whoever it is, will look at the success that Washington had in the first 3 rounds and think that they can do better than that. As for Deontay Wilder, you know, maybe he was just having a look at Gerald Washington. Maybe he didn't want to be overeager. Maybe he wanted to get some rounds under his belt, having been out of the ring for so long with an injury. Maybe the injury played a factor. Maybe he didn't want to risk damaging his hand straight away in the first or second round and having to fight 10 rounds with an injury. Perhaps, you know, like he had to do against Chris Arreola, where he had to fight a majority of the fight with you know, hurt hands. So, you know, I don't want to be overly critical on Deontay Wilder, because realistically he started to turn it on in the 4th round. Won the 4th round and then got the stoppage in the 5th round. But I just wonder if he struggled a bit with a taller opponent, and I just wonder if that's why he tends to have been kept away from taller opponents since he's become heavyweight champion of the world, or certainly the WBC version. I don't know, but I think it's interesting, because if he wants these big unification fights and, you know, wants to fight the top names, he's going to be coming up against these tall guys a lot more regularly, let's put it that way. After the fight, I know that Joseph Parker was ringside, and I know that they were talking about making a fight. But Joseph Parker's got to come through Hughie Fury first. So we'll have to see how he does in that particular fight. Because, you know, that's a fight that I think could be competitive, and that's a fight I think there's some potential. So maybe Wilder versus Hughie Fury would be a unification fight, or maybe Joseph Parker versus Deontay Wilder. We'll have to see. On the undercard, as you guys know, Dominic Breazeale scored a stoppage win over Izu Gonu. You know, don't be surprised if you see Wilder-Breazeale at some point. You know, Wilder would look to make a statement by stopping Breazeale earlier than Anthony Joshua. And whilst I don't think Breazeale is ready for another world title shot yet at all, with his height dynamic, given that he's even bigger than Gerald Washington and probably bigger than Deontay Wilder, you know, perhaps he would look to exploit some of the same success that Washington had with his size and range. But I believe Washington's a lot smoother and a lot slicker and puts his punches together a lot better than Dominic Breazeale. So personally, that's not a fight that I'd like to see. But whenever you see heavyweights on an undercard, you wonder if they're being, you know, prepped to be the next opponent. But yeah, all in all, Deontay Wilder's back. He's clearly still got that power. He's still a devastating threat when he puts his punches together. This fight did make me think that he's going to struggle against the elite tall men of the heavyweight division. You know, the Tyson Fury who beat Vladimir Klitschko, I'll pick him to beat Wilder. If Hughie Fury can put on a clinic against Joseph Parker, that's a very competitive fight where you may have Hughie Fury in line to score the upset. Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder, I've got a slight lean to Anthony Joshua there, I must say. But Deontay Wilder, he is what he is. He's very wild. He's not accurate. He, you know, his punches miss routinely, which leaves him open to a counter-puncher. He's vulnerable to the body. I was pleased to see Gerald Washington banking punches to the body. I'd like to see more heavyweights try and do that against Deontay Wilder. I think with his physique being so long and lanky, heavyweights could really try and break him down to the body. There's vulnerabilities with Wilder. But he's got one hell of a trump card with that big right hand. And, you know, he's going to be in very, very exciting fights. And that's one of the things about Deontay Wilder. His fights are can't miss. Because of some of the frailties he has in there, and because of some of the power he has in there and the attributes, he's always in entertaining fights. And they're always edge of the seat fights, because quite literally you never know what's going to happen next. You never know if Wilder's going to get hit and caught and hurt, which hasn't really happened in his recent fights, I must be honest, or whether Wilder's going to win by devastating stoppage. So, yeah, that's my thoughts. Credit to Deontay Wilder, he's back. It's good to have him back. He's a great character, and it's good for the heavyweight division that he's back. Credit to Gerald Washington. Washington can come again. Maybe it was too soon for him. Perhaps he can step back into some more top 30 level fights. Maybe take on Dominic Breazeale himself, you know, something like that. Maybe, you know, take on some fringe contenders and build up some of his experience and come again. But yeah, good fight when it lasted. Ask some interesting questions. Let me know your thoughts below. How did you rate Deontay Wilder's performance? What did you think of his performance in the first 3 rounds where he was low volume? Am I right? Was that because he struggled with Washington's size? Leave your comments below. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button. It helps me out. Many thanks for watching, guys.